Welcome everyone to Sustainable San Rafael's 2013 Candidates Debate, Economy, Equity, and Environment. I'm Bill Carney. I'm chair of Sustainable San Rafael, and I want to thank our partners for helping to promote the event tonight. Marin Interfaith Council, Marin Link, Sustainable Marin, and Descom Studio. And also Marin TV and Community Media Center of Marin for filming tonight's discussion and making it available to a much wider audience. And I also wanted to thank Lisa Max, Tammy Hall, Kay Karveski, Bob and Sue Spofford, and the whole board of Sustainable San Rafael for pulling together this event. This is the last major debate in this year's four-person race for 2 seats on the San Rafael City Council. It differs somewhat from other debates in offering up the particular lens of sustainability. We're encouraging you to examine the candidates through that lens, and we're also encouraging the candidates to use the concept of sustainability to help focus and clarify their role in local governance. What we mean by sustainability are these 3 E's, economy, equity, and environment, and how the 3 actually come together in a single integrated whole. My colleague and predecessor, Kiki Laporta, is fond of saying that the economy is a wholly owned subsidiary of the environment. In this current economic climate, I'd suggest modifying that a bit to the economy as a wholly owned subsidiary of the people. The economy needs to serve the whole community, providing equity and equal opportunity for everyone. And then the people and the environment are in a symbiotic partnership in which natural systems and human activities must be mutually supportive in order for both to fully flourish. So that's the sustainable worldview. It's an interdependent ecological way of looking at things, and it's the way we hope to look at San Rafael this evening. Okay. I'm also struck that the words ecology and economy actually have the same root, eco, and that means house or home. Both are about knowing and taking care of where we live. And of course, there's been a lot of talk in San Rafael over the last number of months about the kind of houses or homes that are appropriate here and that we want to create, both our individual homes and our whole home, that is our community. So I'm looking forward tonight to continuing that conversation in particular. So to guide us through the evening, we're very fortunate to have Tamara Hall. Tammy is incredibly conversant with the Marin scene, serving on more nonprofit boards than I can count, including Sustainable San Rafael, Sustainable Marin, Marin Link, Marin Women's PAC, and the Sierra Club. She's a treasurer of many of these, applying her precision as an accountant to keep our finances on track. But of particular value for tonight's proceedings, she brings the precision, skills, and instincts of a race car driver, able to steer us safely through the twists and turns of political discourse. And I promise things will get a lot faster as soon as I sit down. So Tammy, it's yours.
Thank you, Bill. And now I understand why they asked me to bring my flags. So tonight, the first thing, of course, the usual, turn off your cell phones, set them to vibrate, which is certainly much more entertaining. If your cell phone goes off, we will make fun of you from up here. I'm just going to warn you now. There's no shouting out. We have index cards. Apparently, here's my phone. I have to make sure that's turned off. We're not going to have an audience microphone. Microphones, we only have 2. They're up here. So we have index cards available at the back. There'll be some people available to hand them out if you'd like. And then I believe, Gail, you're collecting them in the back. Gail's standing in the back waving her hand. So, feel free, write your question out on a card, give it to Gail, and then eventually she'll get them all to me. We can't guarantee that they'll all be answered or asked. We only have so much time. We can't stay till tomorrow. We have to be out by 9. And let's see, what else do I have on here? Oh, it was suggested that when you fill out your question on a card that you put the topic of the question on the card. I know I've been in a couple candidate forums lately and it's not always clear. So if it's downtown or homeless or roads or traffic or something, if you could put that, that'll help them kind of sort the questions out. And any questions on that? Everybody understands? Okay, great. So for the candidates, they get a 2-minute introduction. Unfortunately, you'll hear that Kate Colin is not able to join us this evening, so there'll be a statement read on her behalf by Victoria Wise from the Planning Commission. We're going to rotate who is asked the question first. It'll start with Randy with the first question, and then Maribeth with the second question will be first, and so on. And we're allowing them 2 minutes to answer each question. We are encouraging that you spend less time, then we can ask more questions. But we're going to allow you up to 2 minutes. Kay is our timekeeper. She is going to assume you're going to take 2 minutes, so she'll give you a 1-minute warning, a 30-second warning, a time is up warning, and if I have to, I will come wave this flag in front of you to get you to stop. And then finally, you'll have a 2-minute closing. And I believe that is all I have. So we're going to start with the introductions, and Kate's representative will be speaking first.
Thank you so much, Tammy. Good evening, everybody. My name is Victoria Wise, and I'm very honored to be here to speak on behalf of the San Rafael Council member, Kate Colin. Kate is so very sorry that she isn't able to participate in this event. About 2 months ago, as some of you may know, Kate had heart surgery, and while she's recovering very nicely, she did have an additional procedure to deal with some complications yesterday, which is why she's unable to attend and participate she wanted to, but due to strict orders from her doctor, she's asked me to read her statement on her behalf. So with that, I've been on the Planning Commission for approximately 5 years, and I've had the distinct pleasure and opportunity to work alongside Kate for much of that time prior to her appointment to the City Council earlier this year. Kate has co-chaired San Rafael's leading climate change document, the Climate Change Action Plan, and her decisions as a planning commissioner and a City Council member are guided in part by her knowledge and her deep understanding of that document. Kate has played an active role in San Rafael's Sustainability Subcommittee, and she's wasted no time in influencing how the city can address climate change. She is the only council member and candidate who has an MBA and a business background and brings that perspective to her decision-making. She has immediately impacted the city's approach to sustainability by helping to create an action plan that clearly lays out the city's priorities to address this very important issue. Furthermore, Kate is advocating for broader access to producing food in your own backyard, an important issue to some of you, I'm sure. She's been working diligently with city staff to create a reasonable permitting process and fees for residents to have chickens and bees in their home. Kate has also been a leading voice in support of a city-led climate vulnerability assessment report, which is now one of the city's priorities and will help San Rafael take a more proactive role in combating climate change. So looking ahead, Kate is determined to further integrate sustainability issues into the General Plan 2020 through reviewing current language and ensuring that it addresses the issues of climate change. She is a very strong proponent of resilient neighborhoods and will continue to support their efforts through San Rafael, and I know that that program has been implemented in her neighborhood specifically. And finally, Kate wanted me to mention the city's newest subcommittee she created that will embrace resident engagement and improve government transparency. She's extremely excited about this way that the city is going to interact with its citizens, and she welcomes your input and involvement to ensure its success. In closing, Kate Colin is recognized for her willingness to roll up her sleeves and take action. People who work with her know she can make a difference. I can attest to that. That's why Kate has earned the endorsement of Congressman Jared Huffman, Councilman Damon Connolly, Supervisor Steve Kinsey, and many well-respected community members. So I encourage you to check her out on her website, on her Facebook page, contact her directly. I have her phone number in case anybody needs that. And I ask for you to vote for her. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. All right, we're going to start with, and I'm a terrible host. I didn't introduce our candidates. Sorry, I was going to let you do that. But starting here, besides Kate Collins' representative, we have Randy Warren, Maribeth Bushey-Lang, and Greg Brockbank. And they're in reverse alphabetical order, so there's no, that just how they got to be sat. There was no particular reason. I thought I'd have Randy close to me. It'll be fun. So Randy, you get to do your opening statement.
Thank you, Tammy. I feel close to you, too. I appreciate that. Well, this is, I don't know, maybe our 10th debate of the season, and this is the largest crowd we've appeared before, so I know all three of us do appreciate you being here. It's a bit unusual because technically we're on Greg's home turf. Of course, as you all know, he used to be a board member of this organization. Still is, pardon me. He would have corrected that if I hadn't. All right. Greg is the only member who supports PDAs in both applications in San Rafael. I am opposed. Kate Colin voted to rescind the Civic Center PDA. Maribeth told the Marin IJ editorial board she would rescind the downtown PDA. So unless one of the three of us does an opportunistic flip-flop tonight, you get to choose your second vote for someone who's opposed in one way or another to PDAs. In the decades since the Vietnam moratorium, we have stood shoulder to shoulder, marched for peace, marched for justice, fought together for the same issues. And now we have an issue that seemingly divides us. I believe that our ecosystem in San Rafael and Marin is overpopulated and cannot sustain further growth. I am endorsed by the Sierra Club. So there are people on our side who have this view. Now, it's said about the left that when we form a firing squad, we stand in a circle. We need to get away from that. We all have sincere reasons for why we believe that growth in Marin is a good or bad thing. I stand for traditional Marin County slow growth, and during the course of the evening, I look forward to telling you my reasons why. Thank you.
I think we have those. Good evening. Is that better? Yeah. Can you hear me? Okay. My name is Maribeth Bushey-Lang. I'm running for San Rafael City Council. I've lived in San Rafael for 20 years. I've raised my family here. I know that San Rafael is a great place to raise a family, and the reason I'm running for City Council is I want the next generations to be able to have the same wonderful experience that I've had. I've raised 2 children here. My youngest is now a senior at San Rafael High. I recently had my first day of school, which means I'm also looking forward to the final round of college applications, and next year there'll be tuition bills. But they're off and running. They've gotten a wonderful education through the San Rafael schools. The kids went to Glenwood and to Davidson through San Rafael High, where they both excelled in the physics academy, and my oldest is off studying engineering at Purdue right now. All doing very well, all because of the wonderful things that San Rafael was able to give them. That's what I want to make sure, and that's what I feel a deep responsibility to bring to the next generations. I've been involved in San Rafael. I know San Rafael from the grassroots up. I've been on my homeowners association board for 18 years. We've done all sorts of civic improvements, including improving our medians. We're out at the end of Point San Pedro Road. I credit our median improvement project, which rolled down Point San Pedro Road and started the median improvement project on Point San Pedro Road and brought the coalition together. I also served for 14 years on the San Rafael Planning Commission, along with Councilmember Colin and Planning Commissioner Wise. We worked on the general plan. We adopted the general plan. We thought through and got input from every stakeholder on every issue from planning and thought about it for decades out. And we wrote it down, and it is a living document that is doing great things and will continue to do great things, I think, for San Rafael. Occasionally we need to modify it, but that's the type of planning that I think we need for the future. Thank you.
Can't let Randy be the only one stand up here. I am Greg Brockbank, and I am running for one of the 2 seats on the City Council. And I know many of you know that my family moved to Marin 50 years ago. I think public service must be in my blood. I haven't mentioned this before, but my grandfather was a Democratic County Committee chair and a city councilman, so I've done both of those. But I'm not done yet. When I got out of law school 28 years ago, some people have accused me of being a board junkie, to which I say guilty as charged. I have served on probably 30, 40 boards, which I think is several times what probably the other 3 candidates have done put together, chairing about a dozen of them. Local, civic, and political activist boards where I've worked hard, gotten to know the community, gotten to know the leaders, gotten to know the issues, which I think ought to be a prerequisite for serving in public office. Unfortunately, it's usually not. People say, well, I've never done anything, or little, but I can, serve in public office. I'd like to specifically talk about my environmental background, since this is a sustainable San Rafael sponsored event. I've been active in many environmental organizations in Marin. I still am, have for decades. I've served on the boards of 3. About 20 years ago, I was on the board of the Environmental Forum of Marin, which I graduated from over 25 years ago and have taken repeatedly in recent years because it bears repeating and there's new information and new speakers, and we need to keep up with that information. Second, I served on the board of North Bay Sustainability Center with Charles McGlashan, Dawn Weiss, and a number of others about 10 years ago. And the last 2 years, I'm proud to have served on the board of Sustainable San Rafael, but just so you don't think there's some inside connection, I recused myself, or they recused me, from any involvement with this forum, so I've had nothing to do with the planning of this forum. But there's a number of things we need to do, and I modestly think that I have the most experience, not just serving on boards, but getting down in the community and the grassroots and the trenches, working on dozens of campaigns, including the Obama campaign for many dozens of hours last fall. I'm an immediate past chair of the Democratic Party, as I mentioned, and I see a number of OFA people here tonight. There's plenty of things we need to do to improve San Rafael, and I'm sure we'll get into them in our questions, and my time is up. Thank you.
Bringing out the red flag.
All right.
Should be the checkered flag.
So I think to make things easier, since we're sharing a microphone, I'm going to slide
want to be
over.
close.
I do. I want to be closer to Randy. So we have given you guys several questions ahead of time, and we're going to start with Randy first with the first question, which is a hypothetical situation. Your youngest child is 22 and is a new college graduate. He just got hired by BioMarin and wants to live near his workplace in San Rafael. His old room is now your campaign headquarters. Where will he live?
Well, I must confess I'm an attorney, but I'm okay. But they say when you start law school, you can be asked a complicated question and you say, I don't know. And after law school, after you graduate, you can be asked the same question and you'll say, it depends. So here it depends on what sort of job at BioMarin. Some of them are very nice paying jobs, but I think the focus of the question is, what if it's a lower paying job? I do a lot of work on the internet, and when we were given this question in advance, I went over to Craigslist. I looked for rooms to rent. I found very nice apartments in walking distance to BioMarin for about $1,100 a month. If that is not affordable for whatever the starting salary is for this hypothetical child, then the child can look for a house share, of which there are also quite a few listed on Craigslist. So in the BioMarin scenario, I think there are plenty of opportunities.
Maribeth?
I'm going to take the question as asking about housing for lower income people. There are 2 things that address that issue that we've been doing as part of the Planning Commission and the city government for a long time. One of the best ideas that I like is called affordable by design. That means that when we're approving buildings, what we're looking for are designs that aren't subsidized and aren't causing a great big program to be created, but are just smaller, affordable housing that is made by design and designed well. That is an excellent way to provide the type of housing for young people just starting out. Another way for the long-term lower income people, San Rafael has a wonderful inclusionary housing ordinance that requires that all new developments have 20% of the units set aside for lower income people. And in that way, though, our lower income people are incorporated into our housing developments and are part of our community. I think that's the best way to provide the type of housing that our lower income people will be interested in. I can give you every assurance, though, that if it's my child that is got the job at Brown, we're in the last place to live is San Rafael.
This question hits pretty close to home. My kids are in their mid-20s, both teachers, but they're both married to people that are earning a little more than they are, and they're both doing quite well. But certainly this is a question about the need for affordable housing. I understand, as a longtime affordable housing advocate, that people sometimes feel threatened by affordable housing. They think it's going to lower nearby property values. They think it's going to bring in people that they don't want. They think it's going to ruin the city. I hear that all the time, both before, during, and since my term on the city council previously. But I just want to give you one example of what I've done in this area and why it's so important. In the late 80s, I was president of the San Rafael Housing Corporation, which, although it sounds like a developer, was a nonprofit organization which advocated for affordable housing. And in that role, I founded Affordable Housing Week and got resolutions from the County Board of Supervisors and various city councils and arranged tours of various affordable housing complexes in Marin, of which we have quite a number, and they're invariably attractive and well-designed. You couldn't necessarily tell that they're affordable, quote-unquote, and they don't lower property values. And these tours were specifically to dispel that myth. It was very successful. We need more affordable housing. Let me just leave you with a couple of statistics and numbers. 60% of our workers in Marin currently commute in. Think they like to commute in? And for the most part, no. They'd love to live here in Marin and reduce that horrible, white knuckle commute from mostly Sonoma County, maybe the East Bay. But they can't afford to live here in Marin, so they live in Sonoma or the East Bay mostly. If they were able to afford a place here, we'd have fewer cars on our freeway, fewer cars clogging up our roads, fewer greenhouse gases being emitted by their cars. SMART will help some, but what we really need is more affordable housing in order to have a more healthy and balanced community, more diversity, yes. We've had a jobs housing imbalance for decades. It's getting worse. Every time we have a few dozen new units out of a few hundred total units, which, by the way, the California Supreme Court just said we can't do that inclusionary. It's a good idea. We've done it for decades, but right now it's on hiatus until we get a fix in the legislature, and it's not happened yet.
Just in the nick of time, I was about to bring out the red flag. So the next question, we're going to start with Maribeth. The council recently withdrew from the Civic Center PDA while stating that the decision should be revisited in 3 years. That is during your term in office, should you win. What factors would you consider in deciding whether to reinstate the Civic Center PDA? And then the corollary to that is, where do you stand on the downtown PDA, and of course, why?
Well, we have to back up and understand how ABAG works and how it doesn't work, what it's not part of. Building a project in San Rafael starts at the San Rafael Planning Commission. ABAG doesn't issue building permits. San Rafael does. And you don't get a building permit in San Rafael until the San Rafael Planning Commission authorizes it. I think that's where we need to focus our interests are on what's going on at the San Rafael Planning Commission. That's where our inclusionary housing ordinance is applied. That's where our general plan is applied. That's where the planning rubber hits the road, if you will. That's where the decisions are made. ABAG, on the other hand, is a regional government that produces reports that are often very detailed and colorful and full of interesting directives and interesting goals and interesting analysis. But they don't control what happens in San Rafael. I support San Rafael's Planning Commission, San Rafael's general plan, and what's going on in San Rafael. As for to answer the specific question, what would I think about in 3 years if the PDA designation came back up? I would absolutely be looking to see what has happened in those intervening 3 years. The only reason to get involved in this PDA designation process in the first place is to get access to transportation and transportation improvement funds. I'd want to see how much money had been distributed and whether it would be worthwhile for San Rafael to become involved in that process. That's what I'd look at in making my decision.
You know, it's a shame that Plan Bay Area became so divisive. I think it's still largely misunderstood by most people. It's certainly developed a hardcore cadre of opponents, but I watched SB 375 get passed in the legislature for about 4 years ago, and I watched Plan Bay Area develop the last 4 years. I feel like I'm a pretty knowledgeable student of it. The idea is that we've been growing for decades through sprawl, which has too many greenhouse gases emitted and results in far-flung communities dependent on automobiles, whereas more and more seniors and 20-somethings want communities that are more livable, walkable, bikeable, and pedestrian and transit-friendly rather than having to rely on your car. This sounds like something which, and reduce greenhouse gases, so this sounds like something that ought not be controversial. Unfortunately, again, I can understand where communities saying, what, you're going to put what kind of ugly 5-story apartment buildings next to my home in my community? Well, that's not really happening, but people got the wrong impression that it would. All this said is that maybe the growth that we've had for decades, and we're going to continue to have, very small amount of growth, could be, again, 4% of the population of the Bay Area is Marin, and we're being asked to take on 1% of the, less than 1% of the growth. Could be along and in transit corridors. Well, it doesn't sound too controversial. I think that's a good idea. I think in downtown it's not very controversial. In the Civic Center it was, but I think removing the Priority Development Area designation, which was voluntary, was a mistake because the city's walking away from several $1 million every few years of transit improvement grants. Even though the council said they liked the plan, they just didn't like the designation because they were scared of the people that were so opposed to the plan that they fear it represents imposed excessive development. It does not. It just represents redirected development. And if we don't build it in Marin, as some of them would prefer, although they usually don't say it, then it's going to happen elsewhere, resulting, as I think I said earlier, in more greenhouse gases because they're going to be built elsewhere and people commuting into Marin. We just need a more healthy, better jobs housing balance, a better mix of housing, and more and to improve and address the jobs housing imbalance.
Senate Bill 375 and the PDAs that it created bypass environmental review under CEQA. I will never vote in favor of any project that bypasses environmental review and takes that out of the local community's hands. Having said that, if the CEQA bypass or streamlining is removed and it's placed fully in the local controls. As to the Civic Center, I live in North San Rafael. I'm the only candidate from that area. The 400 units called for in the general plan are too many. The 200 to 300 units to be put on top of Northgate Mall and Northgate 3 change the character of the community, put us in a negative traffic situation, and it is simply not appropriate to take the risk of that many tax-exempt students being added to the Dixie and San Rafael High School districts without paying for additional teachers. I have previously stated that I am opposed to the downtown PDA as well. But when Mayor Phillips voted to rescind the Civic Center PDA, he expressed confidence that he would be able to transfer the Civic Center funds to the downtown PDA. And as a member of the council, I would certainly want him to have the opportunity to successfully transfer that. The downtown PDA calls for construction of 272 units in an area that's already urbanized. I think we could absorb that. So if the funds can be retained and perhaps help us out of some of the financial problems we have, that I hope we'll talk about later tonight, I would not get in the way of the downtown PDA.
All right, thank you. Very interesting answers. And everybody's taking 2 minutes, so it's all good. Yeah, so the next one, maybe it won't take as long. San Rafael has a much more diverse population than most people realize. What can the council do to encourage greater representation and participation on the part of the many minority communities who live there? Because if you look in our audience, It's awfully white tonight. So we're not even getting those people to be represented here. So we're going to start with Greg.
Thank you. We do need better representation from underrepresented communities, people of color, and perhaps economically underrepresented communities. There's a lot more we can do. We have done some things. We can do more. I think, let's see, it was about 20 years ago, I was the treasurer for the first person of color to run for the San Rafael City Council, Luther Wallace, while I was running for re-election to the College Board. When we get applicants for the various commissions, which we interview a half dozen or dozen every month, it seems like, for 4 years I did that in the council, we really try hard to, there's no quotas, there's no favoritism, there's no tipping the balance, but we really want to encourage people to apply. We really want to get them better integrated into the councils because they're not adequately represented. But we can only do so much to encourage them to apply. If they don't apply, we can't appoint them. There are more people than people think, and it's not just the canal. If people think of Gersel Park as this lovely, and it is lovely, a community of beautiful Victorians, and they are beautiful Victorians, but if you get past that first block past D Street, and in between every Victorian, it seems like, you go back there's an apartment complex. There's a lot of apartments. Probably half the residents of Gersel Park live in apartments, and they are largely populated by Hispanics, I have discovered, going door to door. And so there is a lot more diversity in a lot more areas of San Rafael than most people would think. And it is becoming more so. A little too slow. We're still one of the more lily-white communities in Marin, and that's changing, and we need to be open to and encourage it. The last thing I want to touch on is there is something which I think scares people called the need to affirmatively further fair housing, and that is that unless to avoid getting sued by the federal government, we have to assure that we are doing everything we can to prevent discrimination, and discrimination does in fact occur. And I've served on a committee of several council members chaired by Supervisor Judy Arnold a few years ago to try to make sure that doesn't occur, because we don't want the feds coming in and imposing draconian penalties as happened in Westchester County, New York.
Randy, you're next.
Thank you. Well, although Greg says we're one of the most lily-white county cities in the county, I think that's what he said.
Counties in Marin, Bay Area, sorry.
Oh, okay, that would be different. Well, as we know, San Rafael is 30% Hispanic. I can't think of a group that would be more welcoming or have fewer barriers than this one. And yet, the people have not come tonight for the most part. So, we've gone from a situation where 10 or 30 years ago, people of color were not welcome in areas of power or organization, to where the barriers are down but the people are not coming. So why is that? Is it because they perceive a barrier still exists? Is it because they're simply not interested in what's going on? And I'm going to tell you one of the things that in the candidate's handbook it says never to say, and here it is. I don't know. But if I was elected to the council, I'd want to find out. And I think we could do some outreach to minority communities and try to find out, why is it we're not seeing you people? Why are you not getting involved? Why are you not joining committees, running for office? And see if there's a way to make them feel more welcome, or if some culturally are not interested in participation, and I can't imagine that, but if that's the case, then we understand it and respect it. But certainly, I think we all are of the same mind. Everyone is welcome, everyone is encouraged, and we want all of our meetings to reflect the face of our total community.
Wow, I'm living a very different life than my fellow candidates. My kids go to San Rafael High. Half of the school is not lily white. The people I know, the people I associate with, are not lily white. And I don't call them those people. And I don't say we need to reach out to them. These are parents of my kids' friends. These are people in my community. These are people that bring casseroles to school functions and try to give me recipes for their Mayan family treat and are horrified at what I turn out. But this is part of my life, and to me, that's what San Rafael is about. The better question is, why aren't they here? The answer I would offer is that we're not talking about issues they care about. Why aren't there any working families here? Working families are trying to make a living, are worried about childcare, are worried about paying their mortgage, are worried about the things that are driving down housing values in San Rafael. That's what they care about, and that's what working families need, leaders that are interested in that. I am interested. I come from a farm. I was born and raised on a farm in Michigan. I put myself through state college, went to law school on my own. I am an example of a first generation college. My kids have been raised going to garage sales and living off of what we have. We have a garden. That's the type of thing, middle class values that people care about and are interested in. And when we start talking about those topics, that's when the people who are interested in them will show up. Thank you.
All right, we're going to try to discourage applause only because we're filming, and sometimes I think it'll mess up the filming. And you all know you're being filmed, right? Okay, good.
I figured that for the cameras.
Yes.
We're clever.
Yeah, everybody, make sure you look good. So our next question is about this. The City of San Rafael Climate Change Action Plan. April of 2009. It's been 4.5 years. Do you remember it?
Mm-hmm.
What is the most effective thing the city has done to implement it? And what is the most important next step that we can take? So what have they done to implement it, the most effective thing, and then what's the next step we can take? And I believe we are starting back with you.
Thank you. I've never run for office. I, up until a few months ago, had no interest in running for office, and I don't have a career of studying the local plans and such. But when I went through law school, and by the way, to put that in perspective, I graduated 7 years ago. I graduated magna cum laude, first in my class, and graduated a year early. I did that because I have the ability to pick up facts quickly, understand them, and act on them. So as for the performance on the Climate Change Action Plan, I can't give you an answer as to how we've been doing with it. I will tell you what we can do going forward, but before that I would like to simply point out that prior to coming here today, I worked 11 hours on my job, and my wife worked a good part of that alongside of me. I am a working family that's here, and I think there are a number of working families here. I just want to have that corrected. The way to fix climate change is to get our state legislature to pass a law that says starting X number of years from now, the state of California will no longer register new model cars and light trucks that burn gas. And then 7 years after that takes effect, we will have perhaps an 80% reduction in smog and greenhouse gas production in this state. Why don't we do it? Chevron. Chevron will end the career of 100+ people in the state legislature if they dare to cut that gasoline sales by that much. So to preserve 100 or so careers, we cannot have a real solution to climate change. We can kick and scream and crash to barely try to move the needle in ways that will not save this planet from extinction. And that is the bottom line. What we have to do in San Rafael is push upward to Sacramento and demand real climate change by making laws and enforcing laws that will save our community, our state, and our planet.
Maribeth?
Thank you. Climate change is a planetary problem. We can't solve it here in San Rafael. All we can do is what we can do and control our own lives and the things that happen here in San Rafael. And I think we should focus on actual things that we can do on a day-to-day basis. And that's where our action, there are some in the Climate Change Action Plan. I was on the Planning Commission when it went through, and there are some things in there that are useful, practical things that real people can do in their homes. That's the type of thing I would like to focus on. That's the type of thing that I think we should, because the best type of an environmental program, as I think our opening comments said, understand the relationship between economy and the environment and look for solutions that are economically and environmentally sound. They're often very simple things, like taking the bus. I don't have my Clipper card with me, but who knows what a Clipper card is? Okay, all right, good. Though that is a climate change action plan right there. For those of you who don't know what it is, it's the bus card. Get you on the bus and BART. And the ferry. That's the type of actions that we can take that will be beneficial to us, to our community, and to the broader planetary problem of climate change. Those are the types of things that I would like to see us focus more of our energies on. Thank you.
By the way, I put myself through law school too, so that's 3 for 3, and also grew up with pretty modest income. But I am very proud of the Climate Change Action Plan. I think it's one of the greatest accomplishments of the City Council in recent years. I was on the City Council when we commissioned it, when we approved it, and I'm the only candidate that has gone to virtually all of the quarterly update meetings where we implemented it. So I'm very familiar with it indeed. I could go on for hours about it, but these quarterly update meetings are among the best things that are happening on it. I have to call out resilient neighborhoods because it's a wonderful, we can do all kinds of great things greening the city's municipal operation, and we have been to some degree. We can encourage our businesses to green their operations. We have been to some degree. But I think resilient neighborhoods, to really encourage groups of neighbors, ideally in the same block or at least neighborhood, to get together to reduce their own carbon footprints, as I did last year as an eco-team leader to bring together some of my neighbors. We all need to do that. San Rafael's not only been a leader in Marin with climate change action plans, but in the state. You may have seen the news recently that San Rafael was the first city in the state to receive a silver-level beacon award for greenhouse gas emissions. It's very, very important. We have to set a model. We have been, we can do more. I want to get back on the council to do more faster. If we don't address this, I just want to leave you with 3 numbers. I don't know how many of you are familiar with 350.org and Bill McKibben and his Do the Math tour. Good. You all should be. This is the great issue of our times. The one thing everybody agrees on is 2 degrees temperature rise, and this planet will no longer be adapted to the living we've had for centuries. We're already over 1%, and we may get to 2%. 500 gigatons of carbon, and that's going to get us beyond the 2 degrees. There is 2,500 gigatons of carbon in the current plans of the current oil and energy companies. They can still be energy companies, but they can't dig out that oil. We have to be activists in preventing that from happening, or San Rafael and all coastal communities and our economy and our planet is basically toast.
Thank you. So those are the first 4 questions that we gave you ahead of time. And how are we doing on everybody turning in questions that they've got, burning questions? You have 1 card? Oh, so we have cards. Gail has cards. She can hand some out. If you all have questions, raise your hand. She'll give you a card.
You have some pre-submitted questions.
I do.
Some people wrote me in advance and gave some questions.
I also have some other questions that we didn't give you.
Okay.
Yes. So I'm going to start with those while we get some cards from the audience. So the next one is our tax base. I'm sorry? Yes, you are first on this one. And if I forget, because you start getting confused.
Greg's really good about keeping
It's going to be like, was it 3-card Monty?
Would you like to play that?
No. So, Maribeth starts.
Okay.
Our tax base must come from somewhere, if not car sales. And if residential growth is currently out of favor, it has to come from other new and growing businesses. What can the council do to encourage business to move or start here? And what kind of businesses should we encourage, and how can the council make that happen?
I'm not understanding why we're saying it's not coming from car sales and residential growth.
No, I'm saying, so if we're trying to encourage people to not buy the gas guzzling cars, and San Rafael kind of is the hub of car dealers. So if we're discouraging people from buying those cars, how are we going to collect sales tax? They seem to be the biggest supplier of sales tax.
They absolutely are.
So if we're gonna try to get them to maybe buy other cars, then hopefully, like fuel efficient, alternative vehicle, alternative fuels, Volts, Leafs, those types of things. Mm-hmm. But we're not selling as many of those in San Rafael. Mm-hmm. So what I'm saying is, if we're going to shift people away from cars to bikes to trains to buses, mm-hmm. they're not buying cars, how are we going to get our sales tax? Where are we going to get the revenue? What other businesses are we going to have come in here? No?
Well, let me answer what I think is your question.
Okay.
And I guess I have to first point out that I guess I don't accept your premise.
Okay.
San Rafael has to have a functioning economy, or our city government cannot function. We need to generate sales tax revenue. You know, if we want a police force, if we want a fire department, and if we want a public works department, which comprise 3/4 of the city's budget, we have to have a functioning tax base. So to somehow say that we're going to encourage people to not buy cars or somehow affect the market, I don't see that being something that city government would be part of. I think that the way we have handled our development, our commercial development over the years, I served on the Planning Commission for 14 years, over those years, and it's been carried on very well, is the right way to do it. We have been able to find that balance between having commercial development to provide the services that we want, at the same time protect what's special about San Rafael. Our commercial development is all in one area, and they are where they are, and they feed on each other, and the retail establishments help each other, and they're functioning and being good businesses in San Rafael. Yet we're able to have our historic downtown, our historic areas that give San Rafael its special flavor. I will tell you, though, that in my time on the Planning Commission, the car dealerships were some of my least favorite entities to have come through, particularly the signs. I always tried to get the signage down to the absolute minimum. But that's the way we try and work them into our community, because they have to be here. If we don't have a sales tax base, we can't have a city government. Thank you.
I, too, want to clarify the premise a little bit here. The question as presented says our tax base must come from somewhere. If residential growth is currently out of favor, well, that assumes that currently residential growth is part of our tax base. It is not. Residential growth is actually a loser for cities. Our tax base comes from commercial growth. When you throw in cars, you really confuse things, but it's true that car dealers have been among our major sales tax generators. We lost 2 or 3 of them, 3 or 4 of them during the economic downturn. We've gotten 1 or 2 back. Regardless of whether or not car sales go down because we're getting away from cars, the gist of the question, I think, is what can we do to encourage business to move or start here? What kinds of businesses should we encourage? How can the council make this happen? I've served on several delegations with other council members and Chamber of Commerce members. By the way, I'm the only one I think that's a Chamber of Commerce member, a former board member, currently active on the Green Committee of the Chamber of Commerce. And it's important to talk to businesses of all sizes, small, medium, and large. Find out what's working for them, what's not. What can the city do better to help you? And I have done that, and we need to do more of that in order to bring businesses in. But I think the gist of the question is, what kind of businesses? I was proud to vote against Target 2 years ago. Thank you, but let's comply with the request not to applaud. 2 of the other candidates here were on the Planning Commission and voted for it, but they had a slightly different scope of review. And but when it came to the City Council, it was really a policy question, and Target brought in low-level, low-paying jobs, $9 an hour, 90% of whom would commute in from outside the county. That means a few dozen jobs for Marin residents, replacing a few dozen jobs that paid 2 or 3 times as much at places like unionized grocers like United and Safeway. So we were trading good jobs for bad jobs. So Target was a bad idea. That's not the kind of jobs we want in Marin, a low-paid retail big box. In fact, chains generally circulate 20% of their money. Local businesses circulate 50% of their money. So the answer to the question is we want homegrown, local businesses that circulate their money and hire people for good jobs, but not too much of it because it exacerbates the jobs housing imbalance. My time's up.
I've seen a lot of necks craning from the back, so for a moment I'll stand up and make it easy on you. If any of you care to go to my website, randywarrenforcitycouncil.com, you will see my position on this issue. SB 375 and creating the PDAs called for 78% of the population growth to be in the PDAs, but also 62% of the jobs. San Rafael has no plan for jobs in PDAs or where PDAs were supposed to be except donut shops and cleaners. When I called for rescinding the Civic Center PDA, I also called for using that area to develop a technology hub, for the City Council to form a panel of business people to seek out venture capitalists and South Bay technology leaders, Market Street, social media companies, and find out what would it take to develop technology jobs here in Marin at our beautiful new smart station, where people can go and use that instead of their cars. That's how everything comes together. Now, besides sales taxes, we get money from business licenses. I've got 26 years in business management. I pay for my business licenses, 2 of them every year, and I can tell you the business license fee is based on the amount of your revenue. If you can start an incubator for technology companies and the startups grow and they stay here, then I think you have the potential through business licenses to bring in some substantial revenue, but also to develop businesses where we can. The city has no job plans except best wishes. Separately, and not on my website, I would recommend the City Council affirmatively support medical marijuana to be placed at the North San Rafael Commercial Center, which includes Mitchell Boulevard, removed from all schools, all parks, all residences. Let's make money on the business licenses and the sales tax. Now, these organizations have problems with the federal government. We can't help them. But if they want to do it now, or when the law changes soon, this is an opportunity.
I'm not sure I want medical marijuana. I work on Mitchell, but we'll see. Maybe it'll make my workday easier and more fun. There needs to be more cafes nearby because I'll be hungry too. I'm sorry. And generate sales tax, right? But I digress. Maribeth.
No, I think it's me.
He does keep track.
That's right.
See, that's why I need him.
It's all right.
All right, Greg.
Okay.
Oh, I have a new question.
That's all right. I don't need the question. I can answer anyway.
See, I blew the last question so badly that it totally threw me that it's actually been answered by all 3 of them in very different ways. Let's try and get this question right, especially since Greg has it written down over there. He snagged one of the copies. Smart is coming. Make sure I read this right, Greg. What changes will happen in San Rafael when it does? And I know you just touched on that. What's the most important council action that you would advocate to address those changes? And Greg is first.
Actually, I don't remember that. I submitted a few. Smart is coming. It's delayed and it's shortened, although there's talk about it going to Larkspur after all in the first phase. It's been very controversial. A lot of people didn't like it. Didn't get the 2/3 vote in Marin, but it got nearly 2/3 and well over 2/3 in Sonoma, so it got the 2/3 threshold overall in Marin and Sonoma. It's happening. It's going, and I think it's a good thing. It's true that the ridership projections and the financial projections were dismal, but I think they will exceed those because thousands of people that live in Sonoma County, as I mentioned earlier, work in Marin, particularly in the major employment areas like downtown San Rafael and like the Civic Center area. We can all count them. It's pretty easy. It's no secret. Let's see. If you lived in Sonoma County and worked in Marin, would you rather do that white-knuckle driving through rush hour traffic from Sonoma to Marin, which is horrible? Or would you rather take SMART, which is cheaper, faster, and less stressful? I vote for SMART, and I think most of them will. So I think we'll have good ridership. Also, equally importantly, there will be shuttles, I think, hopefully a lot of them, that'll meet each SMART station every half hour and run up and down 4th Street or run around the Northgate major employers. And that'll serve not only the people getting off SMART, but other people around the areas and the neighborhoods. And so hopefully we can have a new kind of transportation infrastructure with SMART as the backbone and other spokes that'll help get traffic off the freeway and get it off our local roads, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and have a more resilient, flexible, greenhouse gas emission-free, reduced greenhouse gas emissions with SMART. I think that was the question.
There's a old Saturday Night Live line, "It is better to look good than to feel good." And the problem with SMART is it just looks so good, but it isn't. It's a diesel-powered train, and why, I have no idea. It's expected to get 1.1 miles to the gallon. With the advances we have in car fuel technology, About 10 years from now, the people using SMART will produce more greenhouse gases per capita than the people in the new cars. So I think ecologically, SMART is a disaster. It shouldn't have happened. The lack of a direct route into San Francisco distinguishes SMART from BART, which is an outstanding transit system. For there to be buy-in by the public, you need frequency of service, 7 to 10 minute intervals. SMART, when it runs every 30 minutes, which means that your waiting time, on average, will be the same average waiting time you have at SFO, waiting for the Marin airporter to come get you. People will use it at first. They'll try it, but sooner or later, while they're sitting there waiting, especially in the rain, they're going to say, you know, I think I'm going to drive next time. SMART's projections are that ridership can cover 1/3 of its operating expenses. So from a tax standpoint, this is our permanent albatross. And those diesels that we're buying, we're not going to replace 10 years from now when things are more efficient. We're going to still be paying the bonds on the old ones. We have little to do with it here in the city because it's the train district, but the city is obligated to pay millions of dollars to fix the tracks. There's talk that there's funding, but it isn't really committed as far as I can see. One thing I will point out, Maribeth next to me is a Public Utilities Commission judge. She's ruled on a SMART case. She cannot help us with SMART issues in any way because she's required to recuse herself on anything related to SMART, public transit, or public utilities. I have the ability to fully serve on the council.
Thank you, but no applause.
Thank you, Mrs. Warren.
Well, we'll start with some corrections. I'm an administrative law judge with the California Public Utilities Commission. The California Public Utilities Commission regulates rail crossings in the state of California. In 1997, I was a judge assigned to a complaint that was filed against the city of San Rafael for the Anderson Drive crossing. I wrote the decision that found San Rafael had violated the public utilities laws, and I assigned a fine to the city of San Rafael of $20,000. I did suspend it, though, after they complied with the directives of the commission. In that decision from 1997, the city agreed to grade separate the Anderson Drive crossing. That decision is on the books and stands as far as I know. As regards that crossing, I will not be able to participate in anything regarding from the city of San Rafael. However, there are a lot of other crossings in San Rafael. Those crossings I will be able to participate fully in. And I need to let you know that I am going to bring a different perspective to the crossings. I have been sitting on crossing cases for 18 years. We at grade crossings are extremely dangerous. That is what we focus on. We focus on safety. And I have sat on cases, the Blue Line down in Los Angeles. We had a crossing right near a high school. We were trying to grade separate it. It was going to be ugly. It was going to be dangerous. We had to come up with a new solution. We could put a station there. I sat on the case with Park Boulevard crossing down in San Diego, right near the Padres Stadium. We had to invent new safety measures to put in place so that we could make that at-grade crossing work. The issues I will be focusing on are the safety of the crossings in San Rafael, how they impact our traffic, and how they impact our citizens moving around the community. That's what I will be focusing on.
All right. So we're going to start with a question from the audience. And this one says, what is the name of the watershed you live in? I like that one. That's why I picked it first. The current general plan does not address the watershed or consider the watershed in land use planning. This impacts the ability to address flooding, sea level rise, protection of endangered species. How would you address this now that we know the major significance of the watershed? And I believe we're starting with Randy.
I live in Terra Linda, right by the high school, and the name of the watershed I live in is I haven't a clue. I'll be the first to admit that. However, I will say that we do have to talk about the issues of water, especially what's going to be happening to San Pablo Bay and it's overflowing in the coming decades as we have sea level rise. Sea level rise is coming. There's nothing that we can do to stop it, because even if we are perfect here with climate change in California, we are just part of the international web of pollution. It's coming. The 100-year floodplain is going to radically change. It's going to extend all the way into Highway 101 by downtown San Rafael. The airport soccer complex that Maribeth and Kate approved as planning commissioners, that's going to be underwater. The flooding, the construction materials, and the chemicals that are being used to maintain it will all be into our water, our ecosystem, an environmental disaster. I would not have allowed the airport soccer complex to be approved on my vote if I was on the city council when that had come up. But having said that, let me also tell you about another environmental problem that will be created to solve an environmental problem. As sea level rises, they will eventually figure out that they need to build a dike underneath the Golden Gate Bridge with water locks, modeled on the Afsluitdijk at the northern part of Holland, which has been used to keep that property, which is under sea level, from flooding. I'm not saying it's something we should do or shouldn't do. I'm saying it will be done once we take a look at what that will cost versus the cost of not protecting our lands from the rising seas. If you're ever in the north of Holland, you haven't lived till you drive under an underpass and there's a ship sailing over your head.
That sounds like fun. My watershed, it should be called Glenwood maybe, or Peacock Gap, somewhere out there, is my watershed. And it's a watershed that causes us to deal with flooding on a very regular basis. So we don't need to wait for 50 to 100 years before sea level rise. We've had 200-year floods in the last 15 years, I think. So we know what happens. And the city has been responsive to the community's needs. And the seawall has been increased, and most importantly, a pump and the generator that feeds it have been set up so that they can run even in the 4 and 5 feet of water that sometimes comes over the dike wall out on Point San Pedro Road. So we're already dealing with these problems. And I think to get a good view and a good look at where we're going, we can kind of go back to the past. I don't know how many of you have ever been down to the Bay model, but if you go and look at it, you'll see that it was made like in the 50s or the 60s, and a lot of areas of San Rafael are underwater, shown underwater on the Bay model. That gives a good idea, I think, of where we're going to go and where our challenges are going to be and what we're going to need to do to address these issues and what we're going to need to do to protect our neighborhoods in the future. And that's where we're going to have to be looking at public works, pumps, and maybe relocating some housing and not rebuilding in places that are constantly subject to flood. But those are issues that we'll have some time to deal with that. I don't think we need to, the council needs to pass a measure tomorrow, but needs to be thinking about those things. And those are the types of things we thought about when we addressed the Loch Lomond development, which I actually didn't vote for, but as part of that review, we required the developer to draw us a map. What would happen if there was a 1 meter sea level rise? And they drew the map and showed us exactly what would happen, and we made sure that that development was good for a 1 meter rise.
I remember about 10 years ago at an Earth Day event, I won a prize at some booth for being able to define a watershed. I thought it was a pretty easy question, but I realized that most people don't really know what a watershed is. But maybe I'll get another prize here today for being the only candidate to know what watershed they live in. I live in the Dominican neighborhood, and my watershed is the Mahon Creek watershed. But I'd really like to, and they have some cleanups there, and it's important. It's not very well known. It winds around through most of downtown and the corporate center and out to the bay. But I'd mainly like to talk about another better-known watershed in San Rafael, and that's the Gallinas Creek watershed. I was invited to an event a few years ago as a council member where we christened the first of a fleet of, it was an old canoe that was donated called the Gallinas Queen, we dubbed it, and since then I've been taking on tours of Gallinas Creek because it's important that we all get to know our creeks better, even if you don't know what it's called or where exactly it runs. There are major issues, and most creeks and watersheds, including and especially Galenas Creek, on litter, on pollution, on all kinds of problems with endangered species, with sea level rise, and Galenas Creek is no exception. But they have one great advantage. They have an incredibly dedicated group of people called the Galenas Creek Watershed Council, with some high-level professionals which have studied this, make presentations on this. They even filed a lawsuit recently on an issue. And they really are working to improve that creek and that watershed. And every watershed should have such a group. Some do in this county, some don't. And some people think that planning should be done around watersheds, and they should. They should. That's really a logical place to determine what the capacity is, what what environmental mitigations and protection should be put in place in your watershed. And so I think we all ought to pay a lot more attention to watersheds if we want to protect our environment better, particularly around sea level rise issues.
Thank you. Oh boy, I have so many to choose from. Let's see. So many good ones too. You guys are really outdoing some of the other farms I've been to.
I don't understand why you're doing a lot of questions from you. That's right. You're making this sound like a party game. Which one are you going to choose, and how do you feel about it? I think you should allow people to speak and ask questions from the floor.
Okay. I'm sorry, that's the form that we set. So.
Form of censorship.
Okay. Not trying to censor anybody, just trying to get through all the questions that we've got. Yes, I am. So I'm going to decide. So here's one. There's a traffic problem in San Rafael. When Caltrans is working on roads, there is no helping traffic congestion. What would you do to help this problem? We start with Maribeth.
Right, we start with me. It's not just Caltrans, it's who's ever been working on Lincoln Avenue is causing all sorts of traffic problems in San Rafael, and never mind when something happens on the freeway. San Rafael's neighborhoods, including mine, are basically fed by there's one road in and one road out. And in all the different areas, it creates problems. There's a few things that the city can do. I know right now we have a controversy on 3rd Street. We're hoping to get some more lanes freed up by removing parking on sides of 3rd Street. The local neighborhoods, though, are opposed to that because that's parking for them. But looking at that, we need to look at ways of maximizing our existing infrastructure. What simple things can we do to make it easier for us to get in and out? And then we also have to think about some of the construction schedules. Maybe they need to start earlier or later, or work at night, or do something different that doesn't impact our commutes, because during commute times it can become just unbearable and cost us a great deal of time, energy, in the form of wasted gasoline and pollution and just overall aggravation in getting around the community. And that's something that city government should be playing a much larger role in issuing the permits for this work and controlling the hours and what gets done on the city streets, and what the plans are for routing traffic around our construction sites.
Until a few years ago, traffic routinely topped the list of residents' concerns. In recent years, it's been the economy and jobs. Occasionally, it's other things. I think this year's list was topped by homelessness. Sometimes people are concerned about housing. Sometimes people are concerned about crime. There are various things, but traffic is always up there, sometimes at or near the top, which is why when I first ran for city council and won a seat 6 years ago, that was one of my top 3 and sometimes my top 1. I've mentioned traffic several times tonight in terms of reducing traffic, getting cars off the road, particularly commuters from Sonoma via SMART. Hopefully we can do more with telecommuting. Hopefully we can make communities that are more transit-friendly, bikeable, walkable, pedestrian-friendly, and reduce these problems. Caltrans construction, no question, is a big problem. It's been, that happens every once in a while. It happened on 5th Avenue also recently, and it causes huge problems. I've noticed it. We can't help but notice it. We all have horror stories in our neighborhoods about traffic jams, which we think ought not occur. I think that if we can have more affordable housing, I think people fear that it will bring more traffic, but every study I've seen shows that affordable housing complexes are populated 90% by local workers. 90% by local workers. So if we have more affordable housing complexes populated by local workers, that will be fewer people having to commute in from Sonoma County or East Bay. Again, less traffic. It has the potential to bring in less traffic. Now, we can't restrict it. It'd be nice, but I think people will self-select, and mostly they'll be local people. So all we can do is keep working to reduce traffic, because we can't enlarge the freeway anymore, and we can't widen some of the local roads, much as we'd like to on Mission, for example, and even Grand Avenue, where I live, is horrible the last couple of days. And anyway, we do all we can. It's important to attack this on a number of fronts and have multimodal transportation solutions, which is the current buzzword, which means lots of different solutions.
One of the first things I would seek to do as a member of the City Council is to repeal the municipal code where it says that affordable housing apartments may have up to 3 parking spots. If we will not have enough affordable housing for all the people who qualify, we have to give those units to people who commit to using transit. And we'll have no trouble filling that with those people. But having said that, if traffic jams would get people out of cars and into bicycles, it would have happened by now. For whatever reason, people will drive if they can. So what can we do to fix the traffic jams that are caused by construction delays? And I believe that is the essence of the question here. Now, when I went to run for this office, and again, it's my first time running for office, I made a promise to myself I would run, but I would not be a politician. I'm going to be honest, stick to the truth. The truth is there's not a damn thing we can do about it. The only thing we could do is have the construction take place overnight. But if we do that, it involves overtime, it involves much higher costs for construction. Our city doesn't have it. Right now, we spend 1 out of every 4 tax dollars on pensions. Not salaries and pensions, just the pensions. We're going to pass Measure E, and I voted for it already. We're passing it to make up the shortage of our operating budget for pensions. Greg and I were just endorsed by Citizens for Sustainable Pension Plans just yesterday. Maribeth declined to sign a pledge that she would fight the pension problem in a proper way. Kate also declined, as far as I understand. But until we deal with the pension problem, this city will be an economic invalid and always on the path to bankruptcy. We have to get off that road and restore ourselves to health so that little teeny things like just shifting the hours of construction is something we can even discuss, much less restoring our police force to the size that it was in 2005.
Thank you. Okay, so this is one of the first ones we got. It says the topic is housing, and yes, Greg is first. To be sustainable compared to the Wind Cup site in Corte Madera, do we need to be building denser, more units, higher? Those are kind of 3 options here in San Rafael.
Denser, higher, more units. Corte Madera Wind Cup site seems to be everybody's favorite whipping boy this year, and it's true. It looks awful and ugly as it goes up very high, and of course, any building that's being constructed, you see a lot of bare lumber. It looks awful. It looks high. It looks dense. The drawings look better. Even the mayor of Corte Madera said in the IJ the other day, it'll probably look better when it's finished. I understand that it's on about the same footprint and about the same height, 4 stories, as the old factory it replaced, which gave out that plume of, some people thought it was pollution, it was really just steam, but that was sort of a landmark in Marin for decades, if you go back far enough in Marin. Anyway, the question is, in Marin, in San Rafael, if you go down 4th Street and you look carefully, you'll see 4-story, 5-story, 6-story buildings. I've never heard a complaint about any of them. I'm not even talking about the 8-story office building, but 4-, 5-, and 6-story buildings. San Rafael can handle more housing downtown, and that's where I think most of it should be. God knows the neighborhoods don't want it, and there isn't room for it in most cases. So most of our housing should be downtown, where we can handle it. Every decade or so, we may redevelop a block or a half a block or a quarter block. Maybe we could do 3 blocks in the next decade, God forbid, and have one for apartments, one for condos, and one for transitional housing for the homeless to get them off the streets so that they have a place where they can go, because affordable housing is the ultimate solution for homelessness as well. Thank you, but let's not clap. But we do need more housing. It should mostly be downtown. Denser, higher, and more units are all inflammatory phrases. Please keep in mind that any proposal for anything, as I think Maribeth may have indicated, has to go through the same processes. Randy mentioned that it'd be exempt from environmental review. That's not true. Plan Bay Area allows a jurisdiction, if they wish, to streamline environmental review from CEQA, but that'll never happen in San Rafael. I've talked to the planning director, Paul Jensen. He says, we love CEQA in Marin. We're not streamlining any CEQA review. And every project has to go through staff, the Planning Design Review Board, Planning Commission, and if necessary, the City Council. We have a history of well-designed, appropriate buildings in San Rafael compared to the rest of Marin and the rest of the Bay Area. We will continue to have that. So the issue is attractively designed, appropriately located, environmentally sensitive. Yes, we can use more affordable housing complexes like that, and that'll go a long way to solving our jobs housing imbalance.
Sustainability for housing, it's not a question of size, but what you do with it. The thing that you have to consider is that when you build mixed-use urban village developments with a 30% carbon efficiency over standard buildings, in a mild climate like ours, the units have to be occupied for 80 years, that's 80 years, to offset the greenhouse gases produced in the construction of those buildings. So the first thing we need to do is get away from this idea of building these new mega complexes and look at infill, look at building conversions of existing buildings, looking where we can improve what we have already and minimize the greenhouse gases that are produced in that regard. We also have to take into considerations the residents of the neighborhoods where we're looking to construct these. Some of their concerns are very real. Some of them are misplaced, but they should be heard and know that they have been considered in figuring out the entire big picture. One of the things we need to do, as I already said, is modify the municipal code and don't set up these transit-oriented developments for people who are not going to use transit. I support transit-oriented development in counties of 1 million+ people. I support it in Alameda, certainly in San Mateo County, obviously San Francisco. I don't think it will work here in San Rafael. Our population is too small, our economy too fragile. We cannot provide the frequency of transit service that is going to make the people adopt it on a wide-scale basis. Even the designer of the concept of transit-oriented development, a professor at UC Berkeley, described the sort of places that it would not work, and he was basically describing San Rafael. We should be behind these policies, but understand there may not be a proper local application for them.
Sustainable housing should be redefined a little bit. I'm going to change the question a little bit and make it more specific. The most sustainable housing, the most environmentally sound housing, is housing that already exists. That's the right focus that we should be on. Our topics for tonight are economy, equity, and the environment. The most economical, environmentally sound, and equitable for all people in our community is to help our residents stay in the houses that they live in, if that's where they want to be, in an environmentally sound manner. Make it easier for them. Have programs that provide information on how to get into the subsidized programs for weatherizing your house, how to do more with less energy in your house, and how to make an economically sound living environment for yourself and for others, which is something that the Planning Commission has been on the forefront of, and that is to allow second units to be built and permitted in our residential neighborhoods. This is a way of providing housing within the footprint that we already have in a way that melds into our community and provides a source of income for our homeowners that exist here today. Those types of programs are how we bring together our topics of economy, equity, and the environment in a way that makes sense for people in San Rafael today in a real world way. Thank you.
Do you think that the canal area has been treated fairly in San Rafael? And I believe we start with Randy.
Yes. As a lawyer, first thing that comes to my mind is to make an objection based on vagueness. When is when? Is when today, or is it in the past? The canal has had many evolutions, just like neighborhoods in New York City have over the decades and centuries. It is a Hispanic community now. It wasn't 30 or 40 years ago. It was a place where you'd have your starter home or starter apartment. Let's look at it now, and clearly the implication is, has the Hispanic population of the canal area been treated properly, or the minority population, let's say. I think that San Rafael does a splendid job in removing barriers, making things accessible. We have a gorgeous community building right there in the canal. At the same time, we are not providing job creation of quality jobs where the children of the canal can have a hope to grow up and remain in the canal and have a job that's going to pay significantly above minimum wage. The city needs to do a better job for job creation, but that's not just for the canal, that's for all of our children in all of our neighborhoods. One of the reasons our children can't afford to live here, one of the reasons, is we're not producing jobs. Again, I call for the Civic Center station area to be used for the development of a technology hub. And in doing this, we can create a different direction for the children of the canal to go instead of going to Target. Maybe they can come to work at a technology company, a social media company, and not only better their own lives, but also bring more money into their community and into their families. That's something we should do. But I don't think the city has any bad intent toward the canal area. I think it has the best of intentions and for the most part does a good job. We can do better, but it's good.
Well, Randy, I'm going to overrule your objection on vagueness because I like the vagueness. I'm going to answer this question in a way that I think the questioner probably didn't expect. You asked, do I think the canal is being treated fairly? My answer is no. But I'm talking about the waterway, the water in San Rafael that rolls through San Rafael that gives us waterfront property on two sides. When I was on the Planning Commission, I participated in the Canal Vision program, and we came up with a plan for the canal as a waterway. What we could do with the canal to make it more integrated into our transportation systems, to use it to better foster economic development, and what the city can do with the waterway. I think anyone who's been to the Lighted Boat Parade knows that that is a wonderful asset to this community, and we are not doing enough with it. And that was our mission on the Vision Committee. We came up with a lot of ideas. Some of them are fairly bold and somewhat controversial. There are at least 3 pieces of property on the waterfront that are owned by the city that I think the city, and that the plan calls for more active looking at what we can do to maximize the value to the community of those pieces of property. What can we build there? What could we do that could bring more economic development, more recreational opportunities, and really use the waterway as a focal point for part of our community. Thank you.
Well, Maribeth, with all due respect, which is what lawyers say when they're about to vigorously disagree with a judge, actually I'm going to treat you not as a judge, but and object to your answer as being non-responsive, because the question was not, is the canal waterway being treated unfairly, but the canal area. The canal area was what she said. And I want to directly answer the question by giving 2 examples of the canal. I've been to the Pickleweed many times for many events, many other places in the canal for many events, walked it thoroughly, as has my wife and many other people. So I know the canal pretty well, and I know many of the community leaders pretty well, many of whom have endorsed my candidacy. But I want to talk about, when I was on the council, the 2 biggest complaints of the canal community and how we dealt with them. One was their cars kept getting towed because they had a more regular period of street sweepers, and if your car is parked where the street sweepers are supposed to come by, they get towed. And of course, they had a really hard time paying to get their cars back after they were towed. So we worked out a solution with them where they could sweep around their cars and ticket them, but not tow them. They were very grateful and happy because that was one issue. The other issue is in the checkpoints, which occur around the city, but frequently in the entrance to the canal, because they're where the most DUI arrests occur, and some are near the entrances to the canal. If they're stopped, you get precious few people that are under the influence of alcohol, but very many of them did not have driver's licenses because they were undocumented. And if you stop somebody without a driver's license, their car was impounded. Same issue. They're very unhappy about that. By the way, the governor just signed a bill allowing undocumented workers to get driver's license again, which is the way it used to be 15 years ago. And frankly, if I'm in an accident with somebody, instead of them running away, I want them there to give me their insurance information. So thank you. I'd much rather they have driver's license and have insurance. But we also worked out a solution with them which said, well, okay, how can we do this so we're not impounding your cars? And we did come up with a new solution that allowed them to call somebody else that has a driver's license to come and get their car so that their cars were not impounded. Those are two major issues that we dealt with, and I dealt with as a council member to address their concerns. The canal, most high-dense communities have much more crime. It only has a little more crime. It's a lively, vibrant community, and it's doing pretty well, but it's not sucking up all the police force activity like some people think.
All right, I think we start with Maribeth next.
Okay.
Let's see. I think we've covered that. I know we've covered that. How do you propose to integrate the commissions and committees of this city?
Integrate them with,
I don't know.
okay, all right.
We sort of did that question, didn't we?
Integrating commissions and committees?
Somewhat similar to a greater representation by ethnicity. That was.
That's one interpret. I was thinking
Maybe reducing, I don't know, the person who asked the question.
how
but
they're
maybe
incorporated
reducing-
into city council decision making, how their voices get heard. Was that the question?
No, the
Too
question, well, that was my question. The question was directed towards the fact that the 57,000 people that live in this city don't have minorities involved in not the library commission, not the planning commission. And
Oh,
planning
okay.
commission is where it starts.
So more integration then.
So it's a racial integration.
That's correct.
That's what that's what you're looking for.
Back to Annie.
Right. Well, I'm supposed to answer it first. Is that okay? Or do you want?
No, yes.
Okay. My answer is outreach, and to try and bring as many people in as we can. But sometimes, we need to look at what it takes to be on these commissions. They can be extremely time-consuming. Working people have a hard time making that type of commitment, particularly for long periods. So maybe we need to look at sort of a job-sharing arrangement where we can have one or two positions that rotate, or maybe we have alternates on the different commissions, or maybe look at different meeting times and different meeting locations. Maybe the city council should, go meet out at Pickleweed, meet in the different schools, and be out in the community more to bring more of the members of the community in. Thanks.
I think we did address this earlier, and I mentioned that we, on the city council during my prior term, have done a lot, but we could certainly do more to bring in more people of color and other underrepresented populations. Again, no quotas, again, no favoritism and no special treatment, but we can encourage, and we've done that. I, more than anybody else I know, have gone to everybody and say, run for city council, apply for these commissions, do this and this and this. And we all need to do more of that, and staff needs to do more of that. We need to get out more information. Everybody should subscribe to Snapshot, the twice-a-month blog of the city manager, and they should check the city's website regularly, and we should encourage people. One example is, among the 6 or 8 or 10 commissions we interview candidates for regularly, unfortunately, it's usually not very many candidates. We're lucky if we have 1 or 2 more candidates than there are openings. Once there was a very nice Hispanic candidate that we said, we need more Hispanic representation. Let's pick this person, and we did. And they didn't last long because they had a conflict or a work conflict, and they couldn't go to the meetings or didn't go to the meetings. So it's not for lack of trying on our part to try to get more Hispanics and other people of color and underrepresented folks on the commissions. We are not resistant. We are trying to get better representation. And if you have any ideas for helping us reach into the community, maybe a community forum at Pickleweed or something to introduce people to what it means to serve on a planning commission or a design review board commission or one of the half dozen or 8 other commissions, that would be very helpful.
I stand by my earlier answer. Outreach, find out if people think there are barriers, help them understand there are no barriers, let them know they're welcome, learn why they're not participating, and determine whether it's appropriate for the city to do something to make them want to participate. But we can't put out a draft.
Okay, this question I think is clearer. Wireless installations and facilities, cell antennas, radio frequency, radiation emissions. Although San Rafael has a thoughtful wireless ordinance, I have not ever heard council members speak to the challenges of enforcing it. Furthermore, recently, the FCC opened a comment period regarding revising radio frequency radiation exposure standards. Municipalities and regional governments all over the nation weighed in, but San Rafael did not comment.
Most of that I was unaware of. The only issue that came up during my prior term on the council, as comes up in so many cities so often, including San Rafael, is when someone wants to put up a wireless antenna or cell phone antenna, there are people that legitimately claim they have sensitivity to radiation emissions and that this is going to be very harmful to them. This particular one I can think of particularly 4 or 5 years ago was near Ecology House, where people were, I think, chemically sensitive, but many of them were also sensitive to radiation. And this cell phone antenna was going to be a few hundred yards away, where the community garden is now, I think, on Windward Way. And they begged, pleaded, and you'd have to have a heart of stone not to be sympathetic to their complaints that their skin was going to burn and itch and drive them crazy. However, there's a little problem. The federal government says cities are not allowed to reject wireless cell phone antenna installations on the basis of health. So we were prohibited from turning that down on that basis. I mean, I suppose we could have said, well, that's not a good location. But why is that not a good location? Because it might hurt the people nearby. Well, that's a health issue. Can't do that. So if we had rejected it on that grounds, we were told by our city attorney we would have been sued and lost, so we better not do that. Now, I understood through backdoor channels that there was another solution which occurred, which has prevented that harm from occurring, which I was very glad to hear about. But I think the question perhaps about how to regulate cell phone antennas to avoid this problem needs to be directed to our federal lawmakers to change that law which prohibits cities from rejecting such installations in those circumstances. I'd better not say, but I'll talk to you privately.
I agree with Greg. Federal law controls matters of interstate commerce, and that includes wireless communications. So we have limited ability to act on it. In other words, we can only act within the vacuum that's left after the federal government's carved out their piece. As far as what the city has done, could do, that's an area I'd have to learn about. I'm not competent today to give you an answer.
I am competent to give you an answer. We've been doing this for a long time. When I was on the Planning Commission in the early years, we actually cited these the different antenna up and down, all around town, but they're primarily located down 4th Street. And the commission had jurisdiction, the Planning Commission had jurisdiction over design issues. And that's how we addressed a lot of our, I certainly wouldn't want to say that we addressed health issues that way, but other issues in the community we addressed through a design format. That's how we did it. But we should all know that in most areas of this town, there are cell towers. They are all very carefully camouflaged so that you can't see them, specifically done that way. I think some of the churches have them in steeples. So we've been doing this for a long time. There are a lot of them in the community, and you should know that. But I do agree that as far as health concerns are concerned, those are matters that have been reserved to the federal government, and we don't look at that. The only thing we look at are design issues. They've been going through the Planning Commission for years. So far as I know, without any problems in the enforcement realm, and that they've been installed as they were instructed to be installed and are operating as they are to operate.
So I think a related question, I'm assuming, where do you stand regarding smart meters? And do you understand the issues around smart meters? And I believe Randy Mary?
Yes, Randy.
Randy starts, all right.
Well, at first I thought that had to do something with the train, but I got it. The issue with the smart meters, of course, is the radiation that they give out and the fact that we are being compelled to have these in our houses and close to our persons, our families, and for some of us near the gardens from which we get our food. As far as what we do about them, the first question is whether the city has jurisdiction over that particular issue. That's something I would have to research. I am of the firm belief that an individual should have the discretion whether or not to have one of these meters in their home. And if the law, whether it's on the city, county, state, or federal level, provides otherwise, we need to focus our efforts on getting that law changed and recognizing the rights and the freedoms of the individuals.
I have a smart meter, and I like the information that it's able to give me, because I can get printouts and know when my electricity use is spiking and try and figure out what's causing that. And I discovered it was the refrigerator in my garage. So there useful information that can be had from smart meters, and I find it to be handy. The city has no jurisdiction over smart meters, and so I don't anticipate the city council addressing any issues other than on a personal level about smart meters.
Actually, this came before us a number of times when I was during my prior term on the council 2.5, 3 years ago, and I want to acknowledge Vicki Sievers, who organized and brought a bunch of neighbors to the council. And it. I didn't ask the question this time. Oh, okay. But I guessed it was your question, but. I did. Okay. Thank you. I do remember you coming as well. At first, we too thought that there was nothing the city could do, but sometimes you have to listen carefully. Sometimes the community groups work hard, and sometimes they learn a little more than the city council knows or even our city attorney knows. And eventually, we discovered that there were some things the city could do. And we began to write a series of, as I recall, 2 or 3 letters, increasingly strongly over the course of the next 6 months, challenging some of the premises upon which this automatic have to accept it, can't challenge it position was. And we eventually wrote quite strong letters, and the opponents of smart meters were pretty happy about them, as I recall, because we were demanding some scientific verification for this and asking our state and federal elected officials to, to put a hold on the smart meter installations until we had some further scientific studies verifying their positions. And so there were some things the city could do, and we did do them. And that's an example of why and how it's important for the city council to listen carefully, be sympathetic to our residents, because sometimes they know something we don't know.
You held a special study session. Yes. Thank you.
I think I was vice mayor when chaired that meeting when you came forward.
Okay. This one is, I'm also not sure it's in your jurisdiction, but I'm going to ask the question anyway.
That's me.
And it's going to be Maribeth is first. Where do you stand regarding fluoride in our water, and do you understand the issues around fluoride?
The City Council of San Rafael has no jurisdiction over the water system. The water system is run by the Marin Municipal Water District. So I wouldn't expect that there would be questions regarding fluoride coming before the City Council. As far as regulation of water systems, that's what I do professionally, and I've addressed a wide range of issues regarding water systems. That's something, if there's an issue in water systems that we would want to look at that might actually have some impact in the city of San Rafael, what we should be looking at is water planning and water resources and how water is used in the city and in California. At this time of year, actually probably more in September, in places like San Rafael where we don't have a good recycled water program, where the purple pipes don't have actual recycled water running in them, We are using about half of our potable water system to irrigate our landscape. And I think that that is something that needs to change. In any other place on this planet, if you poured drinking water on your lawn, it would be at least immoral, considered at least stupid, probably immoral, and in many places illegal to waste potable water that way. Those are the issues of water that I think that the City Council should be focusing on. Thank you.
Back to fluoride, I agree with Maribeth that the City Council does not have any jurisdiction over what goes in our water supply, but it has come before the City Council a number of times, unofficially, in open time, when people come before the Council and say, I think you ought to address this issue, there's a serious problem. People understandably think the City Council can do something about it. I know the other half of the question was, what do we know about fluoride? I know it's a toxic byproduct of an industrial manufacturing process, so people are understandably concerned about putting that kind of poison in their water. Many jurisdictions do not put fluoride in their water, many do. Dentists recommend that we have it because it reduces cavities, they say, and have said so for decades, but not everyone agrees with that. Again, I don't think it's the place of the San Rafael City Council to make that independent judgment, but I do want to throw in something here. Occasionally, I think it is appropriate, and occasionally I get beat up for this, for a City Council to weigh in on issues over which the City Council does not necessarily have jurisdiction, if it meets two criteria, in my opinion. One, if it significantly affects a large number of residents in a significant way, and second is if we might have some influence over the decision makers that do make that decision, whether it's a state or a federal lawmaker, in this case maybe the water district. So I'm not ruling out this. It shouldn't happen very often, shouldn't take up much time, shouldn't take up a lot of staff time, shouldn't take up a lot of council time. But when members of the community are frustrated because they can't get resolution from their federal government or their state government, or maybe even their water district, and increasing numbers of city councils, for example, are weighing in on a particular issue, and I can think of lots of examples for that, we ought to at least be open to having the City Council consider that. Right now, the controls on the San Rafael City Council are pretty tight. Used to be you needed 3 votes to even get it on the agenda. Now 2 votes will at least get you a study session. I help push that, but still, it's pretty hard to get something on the agenda that is not something that the City Council has direct purview over. I just think we ought to be a little more open to City Council members allowing something on the agenda, even if it's not something that the City Council has direct purview over.
Fluoride is the Dr. Strangelove question. It's one of my favorite movies, the story of a Air Force general who launched a nuclear war to fight against fluoride, robbing us of our purity of essence. The taint that came from General Jack T. Ripper out of that movie really colored the issue of the fluoride debate. It's really a more serious issue than that. Now, I want to go on record, I oppose tooth decay. Okay? I'm the only candidate who said that. Here's the situation. The question is not whether fluoride is in itself toxic in a substantial amount in a glass of water. It's when it's in consistent intake to the body and in high doses or high accumulative doses, whether that creates more harm than benefit, and whether people have a fundamental right to drink water without it. The city of Portland, Oregon has removed it from their water system. Now, certainly it's not within San Rafael's power to make that decision, but we're probably the biggest customer of the water district, and if we chose to speak about it, then we'd probably be heard. Having said that, I don't have an opinion on this. It's something that I've been reading about because it came up for one of my clients in a child custody case. They said he was nuts because he was opposed to fluoride. And I had to learn about it. It's really a complicated issue. It's something that needs examination. If there's a real issue here, maybe San Rafael should get involved. But at the same time, in the absence of an adequate and full study, I would reserve on whether the city should get involved. But we should be open to exploring the question.
Do we have time for one more question, or do you want to do closing? One more question?
We would run past 9 if we had one more question. That'd be 12 more minutes of one question.
That clock says, but then there's more time on this clock, so I'm not sure which clock we're going by.
Well, depends whether you want to run by past 9, whatever you want to do.
Let's do a 30-second answer.
All right.
1 minute answer?
This will be a
Lightning round.
lightning round question. All right, here we
Okay.
go.
Lightning round.
What do you think about rent control? And we're starting with Greg.
Thank you. This is a topic I have a lot of experience in and feel quite strongly about as a landlord-tenant attorney for 28 years. Rent control, I believe, is not appropriate in Marin generally, with a very important exception I want to bring up, as we have it in places like San Francisco, Oakland, Berkeley, and other large cities, because it discourages landlords from building housing, it discourages landlords from maintaining housing, it develops, God forbid, a cottage industry of attorneys that sue landlords every time a tenant wants to move out, and it's generally not healthy for your housing stock. However, San Rafael has long had and rightfully has spent millions of dollars defending, and we finally just won a huge victory in the Supreme Court for mobile home parks. Mobile home parks are a special case and a special population that's not general rent control, but we should and do, and thank goodness still have, rent control in our mobile home parks.
Lightning round, I don't have an opinion on the subject. I am familiar with what the subject is. We would need to hear from both landlords and tenants to examine whether we have a situation here that would warrant this sort of involvement, such as they have in the town of Cotati, if they still have their rent control up there. They don't. It's a high conflict subject to enter into, so I would have to see evidence that there is sufficient abuse in the rental system that would warrant governmental intervention on a private property owner. If that exists, I'd be open to exploring that subject.
Generally, I support allowing the market to set prices, and particularly in the housing area, because if owners cannot make market-based decisions and rely on those, then they're not going to build more housing, and they're not going to improve the housing and the buildings that we have. So as a general matter, I'm going to be opposed to rent control. We don't have it now, and I don't think there's any compelling need for it in the city of San Rafael. Thank you.
All right. So it's time for closing statements. And before we do that, I want to thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Because I think once we do that, then we will allow applause. And we will wrap it up. So we're going to start at the other end, since we started with opening on this end. Greg will be first.
Thank you very much to Sustainable San Rafael, particularly the people that work so hard putting this on, and thank you all for coming. It's a very important process, regardless of how many candidates there are, regardless of how close or far apart on the issues they are. I know all incumbents would prefer to run unopposed, but we wouldn't have a very good democracy if that happened all the time. I just want to sum up a few quick things. I started to say in my opening statement that I have served on many boards, and I have received many endorsements in this race, over 500 local endorsements, including the Marin Democratic Party, the North Bay Labor Council, the Carpenters Union, the Coalition for Progressive Values, I think Randy mentioned the Citizens for Sustainable Pension Plans. Others I'm probably not thinking of this moment. Congressman Jared Huffman, former Congresswoman Lynn Woolsey, 2 state senators, 3 former assembly members, dozens of other elected officials, the longest list of endorsements by far with the most elected officials. I think, and most importantly, virtually all the neighborhood leaders, because I'm basically a neighborhood guy. I started out 6, 7, 8 years ago as the founding vice president of the North San Rafael Coalition of Residents, and I'm still a neighborhood guy. I'm currently on the steering committee of the Federation of San Rafael Neighborhoods, among the boards I serve on. So it's important to better empower and involve the neighborhoods in having their voices heard at City Hall. When I was first elected 6 years ago, they were very unhappy because they felt that they weren't sufficiently heard at City Hall. And I like to think I've turned that around a little bit by having their voices better heard, by going to dozens and dozens of their meetings and picnics and annual meetings and explaining what we're doing at City Hall and listening to them. That way we have a better democracy, we have a more smoothly functioning city, and we have partners instead of adversaries in the neighborhoods. So I hope for your vote based on my greater number of endorsements, my greater experience and involvement both before, during, and since my prior term on the City Council. And lots more information on my website, gregbrockbankforsanrafael.com, and call me anytime on my cell, 717-7056. Thanks.
Trying to make a list of all my endorsements. My endorsements are in San Rafael. The current mayor, 2 living past mayors, I'm still working on the dead ones, virtually all the members of the city council, retired city council members, Joan Lincini, the retired city clerk, I could go on. The leaders of San Rafael have endorsed me. The business leaders in San Rafael have endorsed me. The Chamber of Commerce has endorsed me. The Marin IJ has endorsed me. The North Bay Leadership Council has endorsed me. The Carpenters Union, the Operating Engineers Union, the Building Trades Union, the Building Association, the Builders Association, and the Realtors Association have all endorsed me. And these are the ones I can remember off the top of my head. These are people who care about San Rafael, and they've put oh gosh, and I completely forgot about the Firefighters Association, the Marin Firefighters Association, as well as the San Rafael Firefighters Association and the San Rafael Police Association. They have all endorsed me and have made substantial contributions to my campaign because they think I am the best candidate, along, of course, with Councilmember Colin. Those are the endorsements that I have. These are people who care about San Rafael, and they are behind me. Because I am from San Rafael. I've raised my family in San Rafael. I know that San Rafael is a great place to raise a family, and that is what I bring to the table. I have professional experience in making serious decisions, multi-billion-dollar decisions that involve pouring concrete and putting steel in the ground and protecting people's safety for decades. I've done that for 18 years every day in a public forum. I have a long list of decisions that have made significant differences in this state. I know what it takes to make tough decisions on tough issues and how to find the right balance. We need to find a balance between our needs for our current programs, like our public safety programs, as well as the long-term costs of them. We need to find creative solutions to bring to the table to solve those problems. Thank you.
What's happened to San Rafael? Our crime rate is 3 times higher than the rest of Marin County. We have 4 times the per capita homeless population. Pensions are taking 1 out of every $4 that we spend. Massage parlors downtown are our growth industry. How did this happen to us, and how do we get back on track? Well, I'm glad I asked. The answer is you don't listen to who among all the people in office who created these problems or allowed them to happen, who they want to join the city council. We need people from the outside, some fresh blood, and I am the only candidate with no ties to any of the administrations that brought in these problems. I'm running for 1 seat out of 5. I can't make any decisions as a council member, but I can bring in some new ideas that may help. Now, I understand that Greg's your guy. This is his organization, and that's fine. You're going to vote for him, but you got a second vote. Well, all right. I also know some of you are going to bullet vote and just vote for him and not vote for second to increase his chances. But there's a reason to use that second vote and to use it for me, and it's this. Greg will tell you in private, even though I've never discussed it with him, we all know either Greg or I is going to come in dead last in this race. The mega money, the special interest money is with Maribeth and Kate, and we can't compete with that. The vote that you cast for Kate or Maribeth could be the one that causes Greg to lose. The vote that you've cast for me cannot affect Greg's outcome because there's no scenario by which the 2 of us could be competing for the first or second spot, both of us. So that's that situation. I would like to just clarify or address one thing Maribeth said earlier. We've been through a number of debates. She has always acknowledged that as she has a conflict of interest and cannot help the city with anything concerning SMART. Tonight she said it's just 1 train crossing. That is incorrect. The Code of Judicial Ethics says that a judge's first obligation is to being a judge and must not involve themselves in any matters that will lead to a possible disqualification. She cannot serve on anything concerning SMART, PG&E, or any energy or transport. We deserve council members who can serve us full-time.
Thank you. Now you can all applaud. And I want to thank everybody here for staying till the end. We appreciate that, and we hope that you enjoyed it. And I think Bill Carney has a few parting words.
Just a couple of more thanks. I want to thank the candidates for giving us a lot to think about tonight, but also I want to thank you for running. I really appreciate that and the amount of energy that all 4 candidates put into public service. And I want to add my thanks to you for coming tonight, for the thoughtful questions, for taking your plastic glasses back to the table in the back. And finally, for voting, and for voting thoughtfully in the next 2 weeks before or on Election Day. Thank you very much.